Okay, let's do this intro.
Welcome to AT Banter, the podcast where we discuss anything and everything regarding the world of assistive technology. With our hosts, Steve Barkley, Rob Minot, and Ryan Fleury. Now, let's banter.
Hey, and welcome to AT Banter. Another week, another episode. I am Rob Minot. Today, I'm joined, as usual, by Ryan Fleury.
Hey there.
And no Steve Barkley today. Steve is out
And about.
So it's just the two of us.
Woohoo.
We're pretty excited. We got a pretty good show. We have Kevin Shaw from TellMeTV that we're going to be talking to. A little bit about his on-demand video description. I guess it's a described video on-demand service.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Similar model to Netflix.
Yes.
But everything is descriptive.
Oh, it'll be interesting to hear what they've got planned, and some of the challenges that I'm sure that they face in terms of licensing and what content they can get. I mean, you know how much of a nightmare I'm sure it is for Netflix.
Well, absolutely. Everything being so region specific, right? What the U.S. can get, we don't get. What Poland gets, we don't get, or what we get, they don't get.
Yep.
Yeah, that's just got to be a complicated
it's
mess.
Just a spider web of red tape, I'm sure. When you're trying to you have to talk to each different studio, get access to their content, and only if they don't have deals in place with other. It's got to be a nightmare. So
we'll ask them about it.
We will, I'm sure. So yeah. All right. Well, without any further ado, then why don't we just launch into talking to Kevin?
Let's bring him on,
because I got nothing. Well, we are very privileged to have with us today Mr. Kevin Shaw, who is the president and CEO of TellMeTV, which is a fairly new described video on-demand service. Kevin, how are you?
Hello.
Thanks for joining us.
Well, let's just start right at the beginning. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Where to start? My background is I'm also the founder of TellMeTV. I'm not just the president; I'm also the founder. I grew up having low vision, and when I was in high school, I was basically kind of a sort of a stage crew, AV crew, sort of media brat, and did a lot of work with computers. I was basically a nerd in high school, and went to school for media, radio and television arts at Ryerson University in Toronto. And after I lost my vision, I still wanted to really work in the media industry, and ended up doing a lot of freelance work. And my background is actually in audio and music production.
Okay.
So recording bands and mixing and doing all kinds of fun stuff. And I did that freelance for a while. I worked as a mobile DJ for about 7 years or so. Just kind of spinning at parties and weddings and whatnot. And once I landed a full-time gig working in radio, where I basically wrote and recorded commercials and kind of worked in radio advertising for a while. And one day I was basically at home and wanted to watch a movie on DVD, and realized that I didn't want to have to go through the frustrating process of just kind of putting the DVD in and kind of navigating the on-screen menu just to turn on the described video. And that's really where the TellMeTV journey began. So, I come at this from, being a media consumer and, a media producer. So I've had experience on both ends of the, of kind of the production spectrum.
This is Ryan here, Kevin. I'm totally blind myself, and there's nothing worse than putting in a DVD or Blu-ray and not being able to navigate the menus. That's still one of the biggest hurdles I think we face.
Well, it's why I had a whole bunch of them on my shelf still in shrink wrap, because I'd go and buy. I was like, hey, these are $5 in the bargain bin, and
Yep.
you buy them and you think, hey, I'm gonna just sit down and watch all these movies one day, and I realized that I had to ask myself the question, like, why have these been sitting here for 2 years in shrink wrap and not watched?
Yeah.
And that's what really kind of prompted me to look around at all the options that were out there at the time. And our local cable company here, and certainly at the time Netflix and iTunes weren't doing anything in the way of described video, and I thought, hey, I could build this, and we could do something with this.
Yeah, it's funny how, and this is a problem really across the board in terms of any of these, this functionality of video description on Blu-rays. Netflix is the same way. I mean, there's really no way to sort. I mean, Netflix has video described shows, but there's no way to sort through them to find out which ones are and which ones aren't. And the interface itself isn't accessible. In movie theaters, right? The video descriptive boxes, like a lot of times they don't work, or they're half baked. So,
or you get a box with description of another movie that's playing in another in another theater. Which is always fun.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know who these people are that they're talking about.
I didn't know Meg Ryan was in Star Wars.
Yeah, that's right. It's I mean, there are a lot of problems with the the interface side of things. I mean, it's good that I look at what Netflix is doing as a positive, but as I point out to folks, it's they did it because of they didn't want to get sued.
Right.
We're doing it because we love movies and TV shows, and we think that we think that we solve the problems of interface, and that we've actually got some cool stuff to offer. So believe me, I understand all of those frustrations with discs and Netflix, and going into the movie theater and wanting to see something that's been out for 3 or 4 weeks, and hey, do you have the headset for this? No, we're playing this week's latest release.
Mm-hmm.
So you're kind of left out in the cold when you want to watch something that's maybe been out for a month or so and that's still in the theater.
Right.
Now, how long ago did you start up TellMeTV?
Well, we started under the name Zaga Entertainment. A few years ago, we did a crowdfunding campaign to kind of build the first version of the service, and we pulled together, enough code basically to launch a beta of the service back in the spring of last year, and we tested that, and we took a lot of feedback from folks, and I was never married to the name Zaga, and I thought, let's find something here that's that's not taken, and
more descriptive,
and a little more descriptive, and
right.
I didn't want to. Everybody else was kind of doing accessible this or able that or vision such and such, and I thought, none of those really grabbed me, and I have literally like 11 pages of names, things that I just, that's not it. And then, the name came to me one day of TellMeTV, and we looked for tellmetv.com, and it was free. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to get it because it's, like $9 or whatever for the domain. And that's the name that stuck. So we've been under that name since November of last year, and have basically gone back out to our customers to say, we're under a new name. Come to the new site.
So why don't we get into what is TellMeTV?
So TellMeTV is we're calling it the world's first 100% described video on demand service. Everything that we have up on our site has described video, and what we've done is we have gone out and pulled together a bunch of, to start with, a bunch of classic films, some classic television, and some kind of newer stuff and some sort of offbeat stuff, all with audio description. So our service basically provides on-demand movies and TV shows on your schedule, on your basically at your request. We're a monthly subscription service, and go to tellmetv.com, and we have a little sign up form that you go through, and that basically gives you all you can eat access to described video content, movies, TV shows from a wide variety of genres.
And so do you go through like licensing of content similar to like what Netflix and iTunes and these other services would do?
Yes. So we what we've done is we've gone out and licensed some content from Entertainment One, from a company called the Film Detective, from the National Film Board, and some providers of kind of sort of documentary content and so forth for the site. So those are things that are there now, and we're always talking to other folks. I've been talking to a couple of the major studios that are surprisingly very, very willing to help us out in terms of licensing content to us, and getting people interested in the service. So which is kind of refreshing to see that the larger companies are often the easier ones to work with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, is the process really complicated? I mean, it seems to me that licensing is one of the real major hurdles with a lot of the on-demand services.
It is a tough nut to crack. We think we've cracked it with some of the larger players. Some of the smaller ones, they it depends on who you go to as to how flexible they are. But what we need to tell them is that we're not Netflix and we're not iTunes, so we're not going to give them, or at least we're not competing with them with an audience of hundreds of millions of people. But there is a need for a service like this, and if people aren't going to get that kind of content from a service like ours, they're going to find other ways to get it, and they're going to go to, there are pirate sites out there with this kind of content on it, and things that other services that have described video on it. So we can make a really good case to the content owners to say, look, people want to watch your content, people want to watch the shows that you have, and we can bring that audience to you. They're a little more willing to listen when we put it in those terms, as opposed to give us the content because we deserve it. Right.
Do you find, or do you face the same licensing restrictions as a Netflix does, like region specific?
Yeah, that's one of the things that's kind of out of our hands. Basically, the way that works is that when you're, if you go out and you make a movie and you've got producers and actors and songwriters and musicians and all these people that come together to make a movie, all of these all of the agreements that they sign, they're different. So you might have a movie where the director and the actors and so forth are cleared in the United States, but for some reason, two of the songwriters haven't cleared their song for use in a movie in Canada or the European Union. And for that reason, the studio has to hold it back to, the United States until a certain time period has elapsed or whatever. Wow. So, all of the all the wheels have to be kind of turning in the same direction when they basically go out and do licensing. And then, of course, the other hurdle that we face is some of these companies in the United States are doing exclusivity deals. So they'll say, well, we want this show for the next 5 years on our service, and nobody else gets it.
Right.
And they pay a little bit of a higher price because they're they're the big dogs, and they tend to eat first.
Mm-hmm.
And then for us, we kind of come in on the back end and say, well, we're new and we want to do this with the content. And they say, well, you'll either have to wait your turn or have to ask them permission. And sometimes they're willing to do it, sometimes not.
Right. Now, the content that you have, and I'm just going to get a little geeky here, is it like 1080p, and does it have surround sound audio, or?
Depending on what we get from the particular studio, I think there are a couple of movies that have been sent to us in 5.1. So if you have the hardware to decode that 5.1, you should hear it in 5.1. Everything that we get is 1080p, unless we get something that is otherwise. We do get some of the older shows in kind of standard definition 480p.
Okay.
Some of the stuff comes 720. So it really depends on what they serve us, but we give whatever the highest format that they send us is what we put up on the site.
Right.
And then if you're watching on an iPhone, for example, that's going to convert to whatever's going to play on your iPhone.
Right.
So when you get a license for a show and they provide you that show, do they provide the video description, or is that something that you need to go ahead and produce or farm out, or how does that work?
It depends. So when we've licensed, for example, the Entertainment One content that we licensed, we got that with the description, which is great for us because a lot of these studios have the description tracks kind of lying around, but they're not using them because they've used them for broadcast, and then they kind of put them on a shelf, and they sort of sit there until somebody else comes along to use them. So depending on the studio, they've actually kept good records of this particular movie or whatever has description, and that's where we're going to go and pull it off and put it up onto our service. We've done a few titles on our own. So we did 2 Christmas films just before the holidays ourselves, and one of them was Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, as narrated by Vincent Price, Mr. Thriller himself.
Nice.
And we did I think 2 kind of shorts from the National Film Board as sort of a test run, but most of the stuff that we've been getting has been described. We have the opportunity to describe some of our own stuff, which we're excited about. So when we're talking to a pretty large studio right now that has some pretty popular TV shows and so forth, and they've said to us, we're willing to kind of relax the license fee if you're willing to describe stuff for us and give it back to us when you're done with it, which is kind of cool, because that gives us a little bit of kind of creative leeway as to how the description gets done, because I'm sure as you know that there's great description and then there's good description.
Right.
Yeah. Now, do you guys have any original content?
Not yet,
Nope.
but we are actually talking to. There's a girl who's got a kind of a popular show here in Canada, and she's talking to us about doing some exclusive kind of original stuff with us, which we're really excited about. So
Cool.
And so now, does that mean, do you have on staff say, voiceover writers or voiceover talent that you use, or do you just generally contract that kind of stuff out?
We contract that out. It's there's if you actually go on our site and look up, we have two NFB shorts, one called Flawed and one called Big Mouth. That was done by one of the voiceover folks we use, and we actually have a kind of a little demo video on our site as well. She's the voiceover person that we use for that. Who's her name's Susan. She's a fantastic voice actor. I've worked with her for years, kind of in my radio days. I sort of brought her kind of kicking and screaming over to us, and she's done. She's really, really excellent at doing voiceovers, just because she's got a very expressive and very creative voice.
So tell us a little bit about what were some of the challenges when you first started up? You had the idea, you sat around, you went, you know what, I want to create a video on demand service. What were the first couple hurdles?
Wow, it's kind of hard to believe that remembering back all those years as to how I started. In the beginning, I went to school for a master's degree in media production, and I was I was kind of at sort of my wit's end as to what to do after school, because I'd basically gone back and started working in radio. And when I had the idea for, basically for the service, I felt a little bit kind of out of my element, because, this was something I'd never really done before, which was basically, the impetus to do it, right? And at the beginning, I hired a developer who put together kind of a duct tape and bubblegum version of the website. And it was just, something that I could easily show people to say, here's the basic concept, here's how it works. And I actually walked that into the office of John Rafferty, who's the president of CNIB, and showed it to him, and he freaked out. He loved it. He's like, "Hey, this is really cool, and we should be supporting this. And what do you need from me, and how can I help?" And so the real first challenge of this was going from that kind of showing the the bubble gum and duct tape version of this to kind of putting a business case together for it. And it's one thing to show it to people and say, well, here's the potential for something like this. And, I think we had kind of like 5 short described movie clips on this, on this website. And then taking that and, basically saying, well, look, there are people out there who want to watch this. And, John at CNIB was really helpful with that. And we actually did some market research in conjunction with CNIB. And so they were really helpful with that. And then we did some crowdfunding to kind of prove out the case. We, so we raised a little bit of money, and we started to build the first kind of version of this, and talking to content folks. So that was kind of the other big hurdle was getting the first folks to say yes to the to putting content on the service.
Right.
So we did that, and we got something, again, very basic, that was still kind of I'd say alpha was really the only way I could describe it. It wasn't ready, and then we at one point I was basically just kind of wondering, well, is this going to see the light of day, or are we on the right track with this? And then we started to get new people on our team who said, "Hey, we can build this in 6 months," and that's exactly what we did. We built a new whole new service in 6 months. Kind of threw away everything that we were working with before. We kind of used off-the-shelf components to build the first version of this, and basically kind of took it to the public. And so the hurdle after that was, convincing people that, what we had was working, and a lot of people really liked it and said, I like it. It's really accessible. Now we just need more content.
Right.
So that's the next hurdle, and we're almost over it. It's we've actually secured our first investor, and now we're just waiting for them to fill out their paperwork and get it back to us. So it's they have the pen in their hand, and they're just basically just kind of reading through all the stuff that we sent them, and we're just waiting on a signature. But that's basically going to open up some opportunities for us to get some really excellent content on the site.
Yeah, I could totally see that. I mean, even Netflix, I remember Netflix from, even 5 years ago, it was a very different animal. I mean, there was, it takes a while to build a content library, especially given the licensing spider's nest of red tape that you have to navigate.
Yeah, what's interesting about Netflix is that they have, they want to be the next HBO. And they want to be the next HBO because they're doing a lot of original shows, which is great. I think that they've been extremely disruptive in the way that they are doing movies and TV, and for us, it's a good indication that we have the potential to go out and get. To go out and do that kind of licensing. It's, some of the stuff that we've got now is it's good. It's really good content. But yeah, there is a bit of a waiting game to go after that, kind of top tier content and hopefully put us in a position to, do some of our own original stuff or, kind of web only, kind of licensing some web only stuff that, isn't available anywhere else.
Well, and I think it's good timing too, because like you say, Netflix added the audio description because of threatening lawsuits. But even Amazon Instant Video, which you can now get in Canada if you're a Prime subscriber, doesn't have any descriptive content.
That's right. Same thing with Crave TV. I know Show Me kind of came and went. It didn't really have any description on it either. So it's the time seems to be right for us. Fingers crossed that our investment comes sooner than later, so that we can actually go out and start to get some really good really great content, and even some of the legacy stuff too. It's I know a lot of folks kind of want the latest and greatest, but there's a lot of legacy content that's maybe 30, 40 years old, that's still classic, that's still, that's still really good, that people want to watch. I happen to be a huge, Star Trek nerd. So we'd love to have Star Trek on our service, and some of the older, shows like, the earlier episodes of The Simpsons and that kind of thing. So,
well, you can go back. You could go back even further, like to MeTV here in BC Channel 30. I've got Leave It to Beaver, we got Happy Days, we got Love Boat, all that classic 60s, 70s, 80s content that a lot of us grew up with. I'd love to sit back and watch The Dukes of Hazzard all over again.
Yeah, absolutely. Or the A-Team or Knight Rider or what was the one I was watching the other day? I'm trying to remember. Not Magnum PI, the other guy, like the original MacGyver.
MacGyver, yeah.
Oh, yes.
So like they have I think they've got a new MacGyver show out now.
They do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's it'd be good to
Sacrilege.
kind of get the classic
That's right.
classic MacGyver. But yeah, there are people out there who want to watch those kind of shows, and even some of the stuff from across the pond, like a lot of
Right.
we did a customer satisfaction survey and kind of asked people, what do you want to watch? And some people said, hey, we would love to see Keeping Up Appearances and the like kind of the older kind of British sitcoms and that kind of thing, which you don't, if you get them here, you don't necessarily get them with description. So
Not at all.
those are the kinds of things that we think are kind of really sexy and could really bring people to the service.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, the good news about this is that there's just literally so much content out there.
Oh yeah.
The world's your oyster.
Yeah, and for us, I think it's going to open up opportunities for us to go into, somebody was asking me, hey, do you guys plan to have anime on your service? Which again would be kind of cool if we could go out and do not just a description, but the dub of anime as well, and getting some of these Japanese shows in English and with description.
Right.
Mm-hmm. One question I have, and this has always been a pet peeve of mine with Netflix and other services, is that today I start watching a series and bloop, tomorrow it's gone. Is there any chance of putting expiry dates on content?
Yeah, it's not hard. It's we license stuff for a term, and depending on who it is, we sometimes get a note to say that you guys have this for a year, you guys have this for 2 years. We obviously want to push for longer terms just so that we can get as many people watching it as possible. But that's not a hard thing for us to do in terms of putting up expires on such and such a date.
Right.
And some of the stuff will have kind of forever.
Yeah.
Which is sort of the older movies and that sort of thing. But so for example, right now we have 3 seasons of the Ray Bradbury Theater on TellMeTV, and that has so we have that for a year. So next, or I guess this coming November, we'll have the opportunity to either renew that or replace it with something else. I guess I should say now we for folks who want to try the service, and we have a discount code that we can make available to folks who are listening to your podcast. So if they go to tellmetv.com and sign up, they can use the code TellMe17, just all one word, all capital letters, just TellMe17, and that will give them 25% off the subscription price for the next 12 months.
Awesome.
Nice. Thank you for doing that.
I'm curious, what for you guys, what kind of stuff do you like to watch? Kind of movies and what did you grow up watching?
Go ahead, Rob.
Well, I'm a pretty much a child of the 80s, like Ryan.
Yeah.
Okay.
Although I think I would draw the line at calling Love Boat a classic. I don't think Love Boat was a classic.
Every Sunday, my wife watches it from 5 to 6 or 5 to 7.
Brutal.
That's amazing.
But yeah, classic show. The Dukes of Hazzards, the action, the Magnum PIs, the Star Wars, Star Trek's action, sci-fi, fantasy.
Yeah, and I'm a bit of a, for a long time, I've been one of these people that I've gotten away from live television. Like years and years ago, I was a cable cutter.
Okay.
I don't think I've had cable for probably 10 years.
Oh wow.
Even before Netflix really became a huge thing, I started consuming TV shows on DVD. Mm-hmm. Just because it's so much easier to consume. You can consume it at your own pace. You can watch entire seasons in a couple weeks. So, I sort of got burned out on the idea of, having to be home on a Thursday at 8 o'clock to watch whatever.
Sure.
So, I've been I'm a big consumer of video on demand. And I think that's just the way it's going. I think that conventional cable companies, they either have to redesign their offerings and do it in a different way, or they're just gonna die off.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you say that, because a lot of I think a lot of people are a lot of the networks basically are starting to look that way. I know the new Star Trek show, Star Trek Discovery,
right?
They're putting that up on. I forget the name of the CBS.
Yeah, it's like it's their
CBS Now or something.
Yeah, it's their streaming service.
So they're putting it. So they're doing it that way, as a way to get folks onto that service. It's going to be a new world. I think that. I can't remember the last time I sort of made appointments to sit down and watch TV once a week. Maybe the last season of 24, and that was it.
Right.
Well, and the other thing we still face, like Rob was saying, having the cable companies redesign their offerings. I can't use my cable box and activate the show on demand menu. I can't use the PVR functionality.
Sure.
So streaming is, for me, the best option. It's on demand when I want it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, well, and this is getting pretty geeky, but even Blu-rays in and of themselves, I find that it's annoying and time-consuming to even put a Blu-ray in.
5 minutes of ads.
You gotta wait for it to fire up. Then you have to. That's right. You have to go through trailers. You have to go through the menu, and even as a sighted user, that's a huge pain in the butt. Like it's. Generally, sometimes they don't save your spots. So if you were watching, a movie, it doesn't pick up where you left off necessarily if you've stopped it. So a lot of times I'll just be going through Netflix and see a movie. And it's like, yeah, well, I have the Blu-ray of that I could plug in, but screw it. I'm just going to watch on Netflix because I can just start it up and it starts.
It's so interesting because our company was incubated at the Ryerson DMZ, the Digital Media Zone, and so there I talked to university students, and they're all these kind of like millennial kids, and I tell them this is what my company does, and they're like, oh, that's so cool and everything, and I remember I was talking to somebody about this, and they asked a question about DVDs, and I said, when's the last time you watched a DVD? And this person is probably like 18, 19 years old, said, I don't know, when I was like 5.
Yeah. But when's the last time you watched something on your phone on the bus,
Yeah, exactly.
This
and
morning?
Yeah. And it's so interesting because, when they were 5, that was only 13 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Which isn't that like, what was that, 2004? Yeah. And even then DVDs and Blu-rays were still kind of dying because Netflix was was making some inroads.
Yeah, and it's even it's way more so now. I think the writing is pretty much on the wall in terms of streaming as just the way things are going. It's a lot easier. It's funny. I had a friend that 5, 6. Well, actually, no, it was probably more than that. It was probably about 10 years ago. We got into an argument where he was like, it's going to get to the point where Blu-rays and DVDs are just not a thing anymore. Nobody's going to want them. It's going to go all streaming because you don't have to worry about physical media. You don't have to worry about DVDs taking up an entire bookcase. You can just have an online streaming library, and it's absolutely true. It is what people want.
Except
and
me.
Look what happened. Look what's already happened in music. Right. People don't even buy files anymore. It's they want to go on Spotify or Apple Music.
Yeah.
Because it's instant and it's right there. And maybe you go out and you buy a Blu-ray of a show or something as kind of a souvenir, and it just kind of looks good on your bookshelf, but that's it.
Well, you keep in mind too, and I'm devil's advocate here because I'm a bit of an audiophile. You still only get the best audio experience when you do get the Blu-ray format. You know, you've got the Dolby True HD or the DTS Master Audio and now Atmos. You're not going to get that streaming, not yet.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it's one of those things that's changing. So we're affiliated with a company out of Los Angeles called Blue Evo, and Blue Evo, their business is we call QA, a quality assurance. So when they get if somebody comes to them and says, we want our films on iTunes and Netflix and Crackle and whoever, like these are the companies that they service, including us. Mm-hmm. They basically make sure that that all of the audio and the video and the all the metadata and everything that goes with that file basically goes to those services. So for example, when we got, we have a movie on our site that's 5.1, they basically make sure that 5.1 gets passed through to our service. So they actually started as Blu-ray quality, like a Blu-ray quality assurance company. Right. So they're starting to, they're kind of at the forefront of the technology and saying, well, we want, how do we take this experience and put it online? Okay. And now they're starting to do that. And the platform that we have is, basically future ready. So again, once this investment comes in, we'll be able to do, apps for Apple TV and Roku and Android and iOS, fairly easily, right? Because all of the, all the foundation, all the infrastructure is in place.
Nice.
So actually, let's talk a little bit about the design and sort of the UI behind it, because it seems to me that there's kind of two components to the service. One is, of course, the actual content, but the other one that's big is the UI that really, from the ground up, really needs to be completely accessible. Was that challenging to design?
In the beginning, when we were doing it ourselves, it was daunting. So there were things that I had to. I kind of had to stand over our developer and sort of put him in the experience of this is what it's like using a screen reader with what you just built me. Right. And so, like the whiz kid that I hired would say, I hear what you're talking about when you say like these forms or these buttons are not accessible. So they would go and fix that. And what we realized was that, when we were building this service, and even when we went with sort of the second company that we used that had, we had developers kind of all over the world. The engineering team was in Israel, and the developers were in Argentina, and the project coordinators were in Florida. So made for very interesting Skype calls. But that was a little more difficult because, we're basically trying to put, stuff in bug reports to say, well, here's what's not working for accessibility. And they'd say, well, it works on the screen, but, VoiceOver on the iPad or whatever wouldn't announce, a change in tabs and so forth. Right. What we did now is we went to a platform that, they basically sold us Netflix in a box. And, credit to the guys at Blue Evo, they went on our behalf and said, we want to help these guys, and this is what they're doing, with a very specific need in mind. And the guys that we're working with out of New York, a company called VHX, they were actually really helpful in terms of making sure that that the player was accessible, that all the forms to sign up were accessible, that basically the menu structure and navigating the site with a screen reader was all accessible. So there were things that we came across, in our in sort of like the beta version of, kind of putting all this together, where I would send them a list to say, here are like a whole bunch of things that aren't working. And they fixed them, much to our surprise. And these fixes didn't take long. We're just blown away as to, so one of the things that we had with our site is we have a gifting option. So if there's somebody that you want to gift with a subscription, you can gift 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year, and that in the beginning wasn't that accessible. And we said, well, it's if somebody can see it, they can gift it to somebody who can't, and as long as that works, that's okay. So when we basically said that, there was another feature that wasn't working, they actually fixed the gifting feature for us without us asking.
Nice.
So you can actually go on right now, and if you wanted to, you could actually gift a subscription to somebody. And they're listening to us, which is so great. And because we're basically saving some money on our end by not not doing all the coding ourselves. That part of it is great. But it's so good to be working with somebody who understands where we're coming from and is willing to do all that work for us.
Well, it's got to be challenging because, like you said, you want to be on Roku, Apple TV, Android, Apple, iPads, iPhones. There's so many different platforms, and I don't know if there's one universal coding language that works across the board, but
I don't think so.
That's got to be quite the challenge.
Well, the developers like to cheat to sort of kind of hit three birds with one stone. So they'll basically use some cross-platform development stuff, and then they'll say, well, we're going to wrap this up for iOS, and then we'll wrap it for Android. And that way we only have to code once,
right? And
then we just kind of wrap it with whatever. Well, that's probably the easiest way to break all the accessibility in all these various platforms. And you have to, you actually have to have somebody sit there and write out the whether it's Swift or C++ for, for iOS, or you've got to have them, sit there and write out the code for, the Java code for Android. And the good thing about our relationship with Blue Wevo and VHX is that they've done that already.
Right.
We basically show up and we say, make sure that it's accessible and that it's branded with our stuff, and and away we go.
Nice.
Yeah, part of me is a little surprised that there isn't an accessible development company out there that just completely specializes in building accessible content. Yeah, I mean, you'd think that there something like that would exist by now, because a lot of times part of the problem is that you got to hire developers who will develop something, and then it has to run through an accessibility filter and figure out what's not working in that sense, right?
Well, that's tough too. Just before you jump in, Kevin, because I'm totally blind myself. I use JAWS, I use Windows, I use System Access, I use NVDA, I have an Android phone. Every screen reader interprets the page differently.
Yeah.
So,
it's one of these things where it's, all the tools are out there. So, and what I'm finding is that, sort of as time marches on, in the beginning, people would have to go and if they were making a web page, they'd basically have to, code all the buttons and the radio buttons and the form fields and all that stuff themselves.
Right.
And now we've got tools like, WordPress and so forth, where you can basically go and get a page and go and get a button and get a form field or whatever that's already got the accessibility built in. Now we're at the point where, for us, we can, so that the next person who comes along to use VHX to build a whatever, they're going to get an accessible site out of the box. So, it's something that, we're kind of pushing to do the work on, and other people kind of benefit down the road.
So do you have blind and low vision beta testers around the world or in Canada testing with different screen readers and magnification packages?
Yeah, we have. We open this up to. I'm trying to think of like the most obscure configuration. I think we had somebody using like narrator.
I was going to say narrator when you said obscure.
Like, like it was something like that. Like it was, it wasn't one of the popular kind of 5 screen readers.
Right.
But we had folks test with NVDA. I have, kind of a junky Windows 7 machine with, JAWS 14. And, I kind of use that to test to see, is it going to work in JAWS, on a system that's, at least 3 or 4 years old, probably older now.
Right.
And I could get stuff to work and get stuff to play and use the site, fairly easily. So we ended up going back and fixing a lot of the, a lot of the bugs. A lot of them had to do with the payment gateway. Just because in the old site we were using PayPal. Now we've completely gotten rid of it, so it's all built right into the site. So that side of it, we did a lot of work on and fixed that, so it's working now.
And so what do you got coming up? Like what's next for TellMeTV? What's the next big update?
The next big update for us is going to be, we're really excited about announcing this investment that we got. We've got. I can tell you right now, we've got, as I mentioned, we have the Ray Bradbury Theater. We have another, kind of funny comedy show called Being Eve, which is about a girl in New Zealand who's going through high school and kind of all the kind of teenage angst and stuff, and they did it as kind of single camera comedy, which is kind of funny. We've got 6 features on the site, and what's next for us is basically going after the content. So we're talking to the the Foxes and the Sonys and the Warner Brothers of the world. To get content from them, but we're also talking about getting children's content, because that's often an overlooked area in terms of described video.
Right.
And then, getting some kind of factual and documentary style programming as well, because that's something that our viewers, our customers indicated that they wanted. So that's really what's next for us. And next week I've got a bunch of investor meetings that I'm going to. So fingers crossed that we'll have other people interested in helping us build this out as well. And
are you guys based out of Toronto? Is that right?
Yeah, we're based out of Toronto. I've got one gentleman who's working as our VP of Business Development. He's down in Florida. He actually came to us. I think he'd asked a question about the team that was helping out with this. So he comes to us from kind of working in the video industry for the past 20 some odd years. He's won 2 Emmy awards. He's got 4 patents. He's a pretty cool dude. Very, very nice guy. We have a gentleman working with us on the content side. So he's opening doors with us, and he knows everybody because he's he ran Lionsgate Canada for a number of years, and started a company and sold that to Alliance Atlantis. So he kind of knows everybody sort of on the content side of things. There's the lady who's working with us on the marketing side, Tracy. She's she was the marketing girl behind TD's Banking Can Be This Comfortable, and she managed the launch of Xbox in Canada. So she's been helping us out, and then we've got some other kind of part-time actors who sort of come in and help us out with social media. We've got a girl named Paula who's been helping us out with social media. Another gentleman, Avi, who's just helped out with a lot of the design work. We make sure that, for anybody who's low vision, that we've got a readable logo and fonts and stuff that folks can read on our marketing materials and all that. So, it's a small team and we're not all working in the same room at the same time, but, everybody's really jazzed about what we're doing and they really see a great potential for TellMeTV.
Well, it sounds like it's really been thought out well. You got some key players in place who, are taking accessibility seriously. So that's exciting.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it as well. We've got a couple of advisors who, understand just, not just from a consumer perspective. So I've got a lady working with me who's a Paralympian, who's visually impaired as well, and she's she expresses all the same frustrations that you guys do with just finding described video on television and DVDs and so forth. So she understands from a customer perspective as to what's going on, and then we've got a university professor who's doing a lot of really cool research into kind of like the kinds of described video that we could have on our service, and looking at kind of innovations and how to put described video onto a digital platform and that sort of thing. So a lot of folks are really into this. I keep saying that we're on the cusp of a golden age of accessibility, and it's still early days, but I think we're well on our way.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that 100%.
I hope. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we had Diane from
Descriptive Video Works.
Yeah. Yeah. And she was talking about, the different mandates that some of the cable companies have to follow. Still, it's nowhere near 100%, but it's getting better. So
slowly but surely, I think we're hopefully we're gonna leave the era of the flat unemotive voice basically describing what's happening on screen and sort of that kind of voice of God, and getting into something that's actually entertaining and fun to listen to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, and it should be. There's no reason why that it shouldn't be 100%, just like, closed captioning is these days, right?
Yep. And it's a work in progress, but I think we're going to get there. One more, I'll just plug one more time the discount code. So if anybody is interested in TellMeTV, you can check it out at tellmetv.com. We have a 25% off discount code that you can use for 25% off for the next 12 months. It's just TellMe17, TellMe17, and you just put that into the promo code box, and you get 25% off the next 12 months. And then we're on social media as well, so you can follow what we're doing. Our social media handle is @TheyKissWeTell, which is our tagline. And so we're on Facebook, .com, TheyKissWeTell, and then we're on Twitter @TheyKissWeTell as well. So that's where you can find us.
Fantastic. And we'll be sure to link to all of that in the show notes. Kevin, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
It was a pleasure to talk to you. And good luck with the service. We'll be keeping an eye out for it.
Thank you so much.
Well, that was informative.
Yep.
That was a lot of information.
Yeah, I felt the podcast could have spun off into Blu-ray talk, so I had to sort of dial it back. I was just like, okay, we could start going down this road of just geek movie file talk.
Oh, you'd be surprised though. Like for people who are blind, audio is huge.
It's got it. It's
huge.
Even, it's a real frustration. I mean, it's ridiculous that Netflix, you can't sort through content and see what, even if it was
even if you bring up the Netflix interface and there was a link, just like there is for after you choose your profile,
right?
Instead of movies, TVs, search, genres, whatever, have descriptive video.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just have a link right there.
It's just a category.
And all the content is there.
Yeah. It'd be something as simple as that. And even the same thing as, it's such a frustration to me when I hear them talk about web development and stuff and how like just building an accessible website is so difficult. All the web developers, sort of have to keep going back to them and saying, well, this isn't working and that isn't working. I mean, all this stuff should be work out of the box. I mean, there should be
accessibility teams testing it.
Yeah.
I know every company can't hire a team, but contract it out, especially in the US and here in Canada. We have CNIBs, they have NFB and ACB in the US. There's enough people to pull from that there's no reason why things should not be accessible.
Right. Anyways, once again, we're getting geeky.
Geeky.
Where can people find us?
They can find us at www.atbanter.com.
They can also email us, Ryan,
at atbanterpodcast@gmail.com.
You know what? That's exactly what I was going to say.
I knew you were.
I know. It's amazing. They can also find us on Facebook. They can find us on Twitter. And they can find us on... Why am I blanking on the third?
Because we got rid of Google+.
Yeah, that's right. YouTube.
Yeah, YouTube.
What do we got going on next week?
Next week, we have a co-founder from the Vancouver Adaptive Music Society coming in to talk about what it is they do.
Oh, no kidding.
Mm-hmm.
Is he physically coming into the studio?
No, he's going to do it via Skype because we're not really on a transit line and he's in a wheelchair.
I see.
So we'll do it via Skype.
We haven't had an in-studio guest for a while.
I know.
I guess Gary Birch came in. He actually was physically here, but that was... Nobody wants to come see us.
Would you want to come see us?
Probably not. I wouldn't even be here if I didn't have to be. Let's be honest. All right. That's going to do it for us. Thanks for listening, everybody. And we will see you next week.
Bye-bye.
This podcast has been brought to you by Aroga Technologies. Visit Aroga Technologies online at www.aroga.com. That's AROGA.com. Music provided by bensound.com.